Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Warrant Committee of Milton, Massachusetts. It's August 10th, 2026. Karen, can you call us to order? Do you need help seeing who's in the room?
I just can't see who's to your right.
Okay, that is Lindsay.
Hello.
Saying, and we have
So,
Dave.
yeah, in the room, let's just go around and say our own names in the room, and then Karen, you can call roll for the remote people.
Cecilia. Elaine Craighead.
Lorraine D.
Lindsay Sands.
Jay Funling.
And online you have Nicole Boyson, Larry Johnson, Levita Johnson, and Jimmy Stornaris. You have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum, great. The first thing I'd like to do tonight is to pull up the calendar that we looked at last week. When we'll look at this at the beginning and also at the end of tonight's meeting. So, am I sharing my screen? Yes. Possibly. This is what we talked about at our last meeting. We met 2 weeks ago, and we're meeting today, the 10th. We're discussing La Brea with guests and other fall articles. The question that we'll have to decide by the end of this meeting is, does this make sense or do we need more meetings? For example, the original plan was to take next week off, to meet 2 weeks from now, and wrap things up with the goal of being able to vote on all fall town meeting articles then. If they have to slip to the 31st, they could. And otherwise, write the comments for the warrant on the 31st. So at the end of tonight, I think we'll all want to reconvene and say, I'm mentally putting the fall articles in two categories, La Brea and everything else. For those two categories, are we okay with having just one more meeting after this? Or do we need a meeting in between? And also I'll mention that the chairs of the select board and school committee, I regret I didn't reach out to them until too late. They aren't able to make it tonight. So that's, that might be part of the question is, how strongly do we feel about, we want them to come, speak to us in person? If so, does that mean we have an extra meeting? You get my drift. We'll come back to this calendar at the end of the meeting and see if this is enough or if we're gonna need to add one more. So, with that, I will look at the agenda. Karen, I don't believe we have any minutes to approve, is that correct?
We do not have any that have been circulated.
Okay,
And if I could just say one thing, Nick, I'm trying to promote you. If you could accept it, if you'd like to be promoted. Thank you.
okay. I will say I'm gonna rearrange the agenda a bit. We're gonna be electing a couple people to serve on various committees tonight. I'd like to put that off until after we talk to our guest regarding La Brea, because we have a guest here from the school building committee, and I'd like to get to our guest as soon as possible. I will also tell you that for the other articles, I expect to hear possibly from our town administrator remotely around 8 p.m. And our town financial director may be coming in person around 8 p.m. So that's what the timing looks like. We certainly don't need to rush through the La Brea, because we're gonna be waiting for the rest of them until 8 p.m. So, with all that being said, we have a guest tonight, Sean O'Rourke, Chair of the School Building Committee. Sean, I don't know if I need to give you any other introduction or preface, or just turn it over to you.
Nope. Good, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I will say, I'm sorry, I'm being rude. I turned it over to you and then I'm gonna jump in. I wanna set the stage of our discussion. It's early in our new term, and just sort of remind us all, our goal as a committee is to collect enough information to make an informed recommendation to town meeting. With topics, especially topics as interesting as this, it's very tempting to discuss things that just sound interesting to us. Like, I'm sure all of us would be tempted to go in depth about the curriculum options and everything they considered, and who's gonna be dropping off the preschoolers, and they'd be dropped off at the same time as kindergartners. Those are all very interesting things to talk about. I do wanna remind the committee to sort of focus on, we are gonna discuss the curriculum a little bit, I'm sure, but let's focus on what information do we need to get the information to make a recommendation to town meeting for how they should vote on this article. I'm certain, all sit here 1 hour each and, discuss the issue, but I wanna just remind everybody to stay focused and on topic. So, with that, I will cease interrupting you for at least a minute or two, Mr. O'Rourke, and turn the microphone over to you.
Just for the record, Sean O'Rourke, Chair of the School Building Committee and not a town meeting member, Precinct 8. With tonight, I basically have a short presentation that I can kind of walk through. I think the majority of tonight will be a lot of back and forth with questions. And outside of the presentation, there's other documents that I can pull up. So, feel free to ask any question you have, and I'll do my best to answer it. But if it's okay, I'll share my screen. There's something that shows up anywhere.
I think we can see it, yes.
So what I want to do tonight is give an update, obviously, on library college in relation to, I know there are 2 articles, one for essentially the purchase of the library site that's there, and then also School Building Committee has a separate article in regards to funding for the design of there. But I think the majority of these slides will walk through the library site, why we're considering it. But also as a part of that, I think a brief update of where we are with MSBA as for the overall school building project is relevant, mainly because there may be other questions associated with that. So, to kind of give the committee an update is, we got through module 1, which was kind of first hurdle with MSBA. We got through it February of this year. We've been working on essentially forming a project team, which is what they call module 2. We've onboarded TMA consultants as our owner's project manager, or who you're here to refer to as OPM. Now that we have TMA consultants on board, we're actually actively soliciting a designer, and that will come in October with MSBA through what they call their designer selection committee panel. So once module 2 is completed, hopefully in October, we'll be progressing into essentially a feasibility study. And so one thing to keep in mind with MSBA is, we were granted in, and once we got granted in, the output of module 1 basically created boundaries for that project, which are essentially design options. And those design options, they attribute enrollments to that play into the overall program. So the 3 options that we're allowed to look at is an addition, renovation to Tilly Cunningham School of 1,400 students. And that's like a baseline for any MSBA project. So the school you submit on, you need to have an ad reno as one of your options. The only other 2 options we have for, call it new construction, would be a new elementary school, grades K to 5, that would house 495 students plus preschool, or a new middle school, grades 7th and 8th, at 660 students plus preschool. So that's, when we talk our current progress with MSBA, those are the only 2 options that we're allowed to look at. Now, those options are allowed to be attributed to different sites. So as everyone's aware right now, the town owns a 6.4 acre along Gap Road that we got through the land swap. And then if the town is successful in the purchase of Library College, we could consider that. But MSBA right now does not allow us to consider it until we own it. So we're kind of in a holding pattern with MSBA for that right now. So, in framework at Gow Road, we have a 6.4 acre site, no existing buildings and everything being constructed. And we have essentially 2 options that we can look at, as I mentioned, the middle school and the elementary school. For Library College, we have a 4.7 acre site. There's existing buildings on it, so it would be renovating portions of them and do them. And then also, as of right now, we don't know what the acquisition costs for that's going to be. Looking at the enrollment, the options that we have, anticipation is a middle school probably would not fit on that site. The elementary school may fit on that site, and that's just very high level using the kind of program that we had at Gow Road and the placing it on here. So the key thing, as we discuss Lab Array and we layer in talking about MSBA, for MSBA at the Lab Array College currently, we'd only be able to look at two options, a middle school and an elementary school. There were non-MSBA options that were looked at from the school committee that, there was a term that he uses, the options that they've looked through, and out of them, pre-K educational program was decided. So kind of diving into Lab Array College. So the facility that's there is made up of three buildings. Building A is essentially called the mansion, which is the big, beautiful house at the front of it. Building B, which is attached to Building A, shown here in yellow, is essentially office space. And then Building C, which is in the back of the property, is basically the classroom space. We went toward it in April and looked at it. There's existing classrooms that are in there that are roughly 725 square feet. But for the proposed program of pre-KK, they need larger rooms for the younger children. So one of the things we quickly came to accept is we'd have to do a large renovation to that. In addition, the campus doesn't have a cafeteria. It doesn't have a gymnasium. Building C, when we looked at that, only has minimal bathrooms in it. And then the key thing we wanted to do, or at least that we're working with the architect, is we want to isolate our renovations so we don't trigger a large energy code renovation of the mansion. So the other buildings were pretty comfortable with renovations in there. We wanted to make sure in the options we looked at, we created a way to kind of isolate that renovation. So the other part that plays in here that everyone has to keep in mind is there were certain roles that came out of this that each committee or board kind of played. So the school committee prescribed what that enrollment would look like or what that educational program would look like at this site. The school building committee takes that that program and we went out and hired an architect group, a DLR group. They also worked with a cost estimator and a structural engineer to look at the facility, to place that educational program into the facility, give what the layouts would look like, and then finally what the cost estimates would be for those. Repetitive slide, I apologize, repetitive slide. Here we go, sorry about that. So what you see here is essentially a timeline. So as I mentioned, the school building committee school committee for the summer. So we're joining you guys in your
Sean, I don't know if anybody else is hearing this. Your sound is cutting out a little bit. I'm getting almost everything you're saying. Maybe if you could speak a little bit slower.
Speak a little more into it. How's that?
Yes, that'll.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Oh, nope, that got worse again.
Okay for me, but
It might be in the room because it's fine online.
yeah.
Okay. Voice, okay.
Okay, yeah, whatever you're doing earlier was better than whatever you're doing just now, so.
I'll try to think back for 10 minutes. So sorry about that. Essentially, what I was showing here is a timeline for work of the school committee and school building committee over the summer. A couple of key things to keep on here is essentially in July 6th, the school building committee, the school district, and DLR group met with our early childhood education planner and the superintendent. And we took the pre-K program and really dove into it with the architects to develop how many rooms they needed, professional spaces needed, basically everything that when it goes into the floor plan. This is essentially called a visioning session. The one thing I caution everybody or just to be aware of is, a lot of this work was done over the course of essentially 2 months, where a program like this to really get fully baked typically takes about a year. But we were doing this in order to advise the town as best we can, knowing the property is going up for sale fairly quick. So we had to be kind of agile, in our response that we had there. So what we looked at were three options, and I'll explain them. The first one, you can call it as a base option that we looked at very minimal additions onto the building and what could we get out of the building for essentially what it exists today. And essentially what we looked at was an educational program that would provide some pre-K spaces, 4 of them total. Let me just move the roster so I can read this again. And 2 special ed spaces. For kindergarten, there were 10 spaces and 1 special ed, which didn't meet the programmatic requirements that we had out of that visioning session. So we went to the next step, which is essentially a 2-level addition. And with this 2-level addition, we hit the classroom counts that were prescribed or asked for by the district. And then finally, what we did is said, because we have a 2-level addition attaching to a 3-level structure, what would a 3-level structure look like? And this became, essentially what we put out there as option 3. And option 3, we believe, provides more future proofing for this site so that, as we, construct this, it would allow what is currently half-day preschool to go to full-day preschool, which was attractive to some people. And then, hit all our other spaces along with some additional capacity. So the big parts of these that I know everyone's interested in is essentially costs. So looking at option 1, which was the kind of baseline one, the overall project cost for it was approximately $42 million. Option 2, which basically hits the program that the district was looking at, was about $74 million. And option 3 was, which was the future build out, or the future proofing build out of this, was approximately $85 million. And again, I have more detailed floor plans, other things, cost estimates, if people want to dive into those. But to keep the meeting short, to keep the presentation short, that's my last slide, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. While we're lingering on slides, can you go to the previous one just so that can sort of hover in front of us? Thank you. So I'll ask my first question. So the costs shown here do not include acquisition costs?
It does not. So anything to do with the acquisition of the property is not the school building committee's role. The select board is the one negotiating for that right now. So, anything you see here are just base project costs. There's no acquisition costs associated with it.
Thank you. All right. I know that we have is the term subcommittee, is the term not subcommittee? I know we have experts being Elaine, Nick, and Nikki, who've looked into this already. Would any of you like to start off with some of the things you've looked into, discussed?
If I could, I'll start.
Okay, Elaine.
The school committee, I know, 5 years ago or so, originally considered, I don't know if you can answer this question, Sean, because I would have asked it of somebody on the school committee, but if you can't, then I'll just ask it at the next meeting. I know that the original plan that got a lot of pushback from the neighborhood was to put a pre-KK building at the high school. And that was at least 5 years ago. And then the switch was made, believing that a middle school on Guile Road would be preferable. I'd just like to hear why we're back to a pre-KK. Is it because of the space issues at La Brea?
So yeah, I'll do my best to respond to the timeline. So I believe that the Early Childhood Education Center that you're referencing came out of the was it DRA study that was done in 2018 it was commissioned to the school committee as a space needs one. In that they presented certain options, and at that time, pre-KK was considered, and that was actually before the school building committee. So I think, or at least I've been on school building committee since the beginning. Our initial efforts was not an early childhood education center, but it was elementary school, K-5. And then as we progressed through, I think it was the first 3 or 4 years for school building committee, we saw a migration of the overcrowding getting up to the middle school. And, we actually have a video on it that we put together a long time ago. And at that time, that's where we made that transition to the middle school. Reverting, back to a pre-K solution right now, I think is coming up mainly due to the site that we're looking at and what would be the best educational program for that site. I don't think would fit there. And I only say that the Gow Road property, like I said, is about 6.8 acres. We were having a tough time fitting the middle school on that before it was successful. To fit that on Ray's property of 4.7 acres, we just don't think it would have been possible. So we're trying to look at the building for currently what it is and how we would best financially put some program over there. And KK was, I believe, the one that was, it was prescribed by the school committee, that they felt that it would be the best one for it.
I see. So it doesn't address that migration to the middle school that was addressed by the land swap acquisition.
Yeah, correct. So I think, one of the things everyone's trying to do with this is compare and contrast, a Labouré project to Gow Road. And even the superintendent did not acknowledge it the other night at the at select board of, it doesn't address the middle schools. So I think what would be helpful, if people are really trying to look at the two of these and compare them, is, we have a project at Labouré that obviously would be less expensive than the project at Gow Road, doesn't address everything. And potentially, if the overcrowding persists at the middle school, it may require a future project at the middle school that would then cost additional money. I don't know what that would be. We didn't study that. But, if you're trying to really get an even balance or a comparison against both of them, just acknowledging there would be a future project at some point in the school.
Okay, I have one last question, and then I'll let somebody else have a turn. When these buildings that are in place now, well, all the schools, when they were built, we went through the MSBA, and they would not allow the schools to be built for more than the number of students that was currently in place. If we go with the MSBA again, like start the timeline over and try to get the Labouré thing on that timeline, is the MSBA still going to prevent us from taking option number 3, which would be looking toward the future and trying to address what happened last time, which is the future overcrowding?
Question. It sounds like you've gone through an MSBA process before. So so what happens right now is, that's why I gave the presentation under the lens of what's by MSBA and what's not. So right now, the preschool K option would not be redundant on MSBA and current. The town can re-engage with MSBA, and essentially the process would be, we would go back to module 1, and restart that, and a new enrollment analysis would be done pre-KK. That enrollment analysis would align with some new option. It probably wouldn't be option 2 or option 3. And then if we decided to build out more than what that would be, the MSBA would not reimburse for that, and that would be the diluted historic cost that would pull down their effective reimbursement. And if that's too confusing, I can try to simplify it a little.
No, I understand what you're saying. Thank you very much.
I'd look at Nick and Nikki, since you're two of the other people that have been looking at this recently.
I'm happy to jump in. Thank you so much, Sean, because I know this has been a long time for you working on all these projects. I have effectively similar concerns, but I guess for me, when I look at the old plan, which I was able to find online, it effectively said new middle school with pre-K attached, 660 students. This is the land adjacent to MHS on Guile Road. And then Pierce would house grades 5 and 6 and some district-wide offices. So to me, I know that was the plan that was pre-La Brea. I think this was the plan that people were pretty happy about. You figured out a way to fit the new middle school. It would have some pre-K. Now, I'm not sure if it's the same amount of pre-K as we're looking at now. So that's one of my questions. And then Pierce moving to grades 5 and 6 and moving offices seems that it would solve overcrowding in all three, genres of school. So elementary, middle, and high school. So I guess my two questions are, one, does that old plan give us enough room for pre-K? And two, I guess if so, then is the La Brea more of a shiny object? We see a new building and we want to buy it. And I don't mean to be dismissive or not kind, but it feels a little like we've got this nice plan going. Yes, it might cost more, but it doesn't address the overcrowding at the middle school, which perhaps isn't an issue anymore. And I'm not exactly sure if it fully addresses the pre-K. So any insight you have on that would be amazing.
Yes, so it is the old plan, what we take out. The intention is to have the same students in pre-K that we have today.
Sean, I'm sorry, we're really not able to hear you in the room.
Okay, there's some background noise going on. I'm not sure if someone's unmuted.
Okay.
So the old program or the middle school preschool component of the existing preschool looks like, and that would not be full day preschool that I was discussing here. But what we tried to do, or one of the reasons at that project, we took preschool essentially out of the building and made a separate structure for it, was that at some point, hopefully in the future, we could expand on that building and build out full day preschool. So that was the reasoning way back when that project was preschool and the middle school all integrated under one roof. And then we separated them, hoping preschool would have some way to expand in the future. The second question in regards to the appeal of La Brea, for our end, it's not up to school building committee. We're tasked, essentially our charge is to solve overcrowding in the town. And if the town is successful on buying this, for me, I've since day one when this has come up, I've indicated school building committee's role on this is advisory only. So our job is to present options. The overall decision of what goes in there, I believe would lay with school committee and with the select board. So when they do join a future meeting, that would probably be a better question for them to answer.
Okay, great. So if the prior plan was to be enacted, there still is some concern that there wouldn't be enough space for pre-K, but but La Brea option 3 would be enough space for pre-K. So that is a interesting trade-off.
Well, yeah, just clarification. So there is, under the Gal Road option, there is enough room for half-day preschool.
Okay.
Yeah, so every the enrollment that we have in preschool would be not that there at Gal Road. It would not be able to under the preschool, and you could expand it in the future, as I said.
These are all great. And Sean, I think you've been awesome in going through all the questions and the facts and everything. But I guess, and this is all, I think, inherently important for the potential things that are going to be on the upcoming special town meeting. But I think the two things that are actually on the town meeting warrant, one are, should we buy the La Brea property? And we still haven't seen a number on that yet, right? An actual cost estimate. And then the other question is, allocating funds for designing that property, should we do it, right? So I guess to me, there are three things, and I'm not sure you know the answer to those questions. One is economically, is La Brea less expensive than the project at Guile Road? Seems like it probably is, depending upon how much it costs to acquire that land. The second thing is, does the school committee think this is a solution that they find attractive? I haven't heard that one way or another. And then the third thing is, what's the fallback plan? Let's say we buy it, and for whatever reason we decide not to build the school there. What's Milton's exit plan with regards to that property? And I haven't heard anything about that either. And I'm not sure you're in a position to answer those three questions, but to me, those are the three things that are really important. They're wrapped up in what we're going to have to approve at town meeting or recommend, and then town meeting to vote on. But they're kind of the next step after all this happens.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. You know, I mean, I have similar questions. So I'm not in a position to answer those. But I think, you know, the representatives of the select board and school committee, when they do come on, we'll be able to at least elaborate on them more than me.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So, Sean, I have a question. I think you and I have talked about this, but I want to be sure if I remember it. So, the MSBA process. We're currently not in the process for pre-KK. Is the issue? I'm rephrasing what I think I heard you say to me previously, which is we could do that process. We are not in danger. I would phrase it as what I thought I heard. What I thought I heard was we could do that process with a pre-KK. They would probably allow us to look at the pre-KK, but it would set us back in time. So the risk there would be that it would be slower, but not much of a risk that they would say, nope, sorry, this isn't an option you can consider in MSBA. Did I summarize that correctly, Sean?
Correct. So yeah, we're under an MSBA project right now, and we were advised by MSBA as we graduated out of Module 1 that, you know, and at the time when we graduated out of Module 1, laboratory was such an option. We basically confirmed the options I presented. Only one. MSBA, we're not the first one to have this happen before if something new come up. But what they warned us is it would create a delay because now we would have to go back to the beginning option, restart, and do the enrollment analysis again, and then basically get to where we were. And just as a timeline, you know, that Module 1, when we worked on this last year, we got everything done. We had a 270-day window to complete everything. We completed it in 90 days. It still took us close to 270 days to get there. You know, MSBA is, they probably don't move as quickly as I would like. And if we had to restart, again, I don't think they would be, you know, in any rush to help us move along faster.
Understood. So it would be a delay, but we're reasonably sure that yes, we're in the program, yes, we can look at this option to the program, and that would reimburse us. Are we still talking 45% of allowed costs? Is that the right way to say it, or? Yeah,
so they had indicated to us that 45% of eligible costs would be reimbursed. Through our work previously with our OPM, there's essentially a calculated average that would dilute that 45% down to an effective rate of 28%.
You cut out at just the perfect time.
28%.
28.
Yep.
To put numbers on that, if I think I heard your conversation at other meetings in the past, the middle school project as is currently considered after the reimbursement is going to cost Milton approximately $130 million. This project, even for option 3, is $85 million plus the land acquisition costs. So it seems like you could do better with the MSBA, which might, you know, maybe offset with extra time and you maybe get some inflation costs in there or whatever. But from a dollars and cents perspective to Milton, if the school committee says, yes, we are enthusiastic about this plan, then it seems like it's a pretty clear savings to Milton.
Yeah, so the one caveat to that is that's dollar to dollar comparison. So educational program to educational program, you'd still have to assume there's some future middle school project that would have to be done. And the middle school project, whatever it would be, 85 million plus acquisition cost, whatever that delta is, you'd have to assume that project would be less than that. And that's just, when you're truly trying to compare it, apples to apples comparison.
No, that's a great point. And I think I also heard you talk about the fact that there could be some additional reconfiguration costs of the elementary school buildings when you take the kindergartens out there to make those classrooms a little bit more appropriate for other elementary school students. There might be some additional reconfiguration costs there also.
Yeah, our take on the reconfiguration costs is what option, if it's a lab pre-K, middle school, it's going to be, absorb costs for either one of those that are there. So for us, we acknowledge them, but we don't really think it's a differentiator.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll open up to the floor, Cecile.
Yeah, I just had a logistics question. I think last year in the fall special town meeting, we voted to extend I think the deadline out by 5 years because of, I guess, the process taking longer. Will we need to vote to move that out likely if we have to go with Labouré?
No, so what you're referring to is the extension to the for land. That is good to announce that actually made its way through its passed. The governor signed it, so it has extended it to 2033. There's no intention right now. For example, if the town was successful on Labouré and we pivoted to do this program at Labouré, we probably would not be doing, obviously, a second construction project at Gow Road.
Looking around the floor, literally and virtually.
I would just say it's incredibly impressive how much the school building committee, working with the architects and stuff like that, seem to have gotten done, and the school committee in such a short period of time.
So I'll ask the committee. I think Nick did a very good job of boiling down 3 questions that we need answers to that we don't have answers to. One, and I'll admit this, I'm the chair, I should be on top of these things. I don't know when we're gonna arrive on a price for the property. Presumably before the warrant goes to print. But yeah, that's gonna be pretty key for us knowing that before we have a vote. But also questions about, what else we do with the land and about, what about the programming? So, and I apologize for some of you who joined late. We don't have members of the select board and the school committee joining us. I reached out to them later than I should have, and they weren't able to make it tonight. I'm gonna see, I think the chair of the select board, I believe, said he could meet us 2 weeks from now, but I think I'll reach out to the chairs of both boards and see when they can meet us. Again, for those of you who joined us late, we're gonna have to discuss, do we meet next week or do we go on our 2-week cycle? See when they can meet us, even if it's not on a Monday. I'm gonna take it upon myself to say, we really wanna meet with the chair of the select board, the school committee, even if it's not on a Monday. We'll see when they're available and I'll line them up. So,
Can I ask a question?
yes, go ahead.
What is pre-K exactly for purposes of all of this?
Sean, are you able to answer that?
As best I can as a parent, really, as could even get the ages. Can't recall the exact ages. I just know it's before kindergarten. Sorry.
But is it do you know, is it 2 years? You would go 2 years before kindergarten, or is it really just that 1 year before you're enrolled into the kindergarten?
I think it's 2 years, and it potentially, like, with my daughter, she actually had three because she had an IEP. Preschool, I just know this specifically is that if a child has an IEP at that age, they were trying to take them, I believe, at the age 6 or something like that. I don't remember exactly. The preschool isn't universal for everybody in the town. I believe there's a lottery for certain kids, and then kids with IEPs get to do it. Yeah, one to ask.
We had a hard time in the room hearing you again. Did we get the gist?
Yeah, I think I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
One other thing, and this is sort of straying off my rule of sticking on topic, but I think in the past, when people have asked, why do we have a pre-K, our answer has been, we're offering the bare minimum of the kids who need it because they're special needs, and then you have to have sort of, I'll say, non-special need kids in there because of the way it's set up. So we've been doing, I'll say, the bare minimum. Now, then there's the question of, will we be doing more than the bare minimum? Again, I'm breaking my own rule of sort of getting off topic. That'll be something that people want to discuss with the school committee more so than with you. So we haven't wrapped up this topic. Obviously, we've got, at the very least, how much is this property going to cost, along with a few other questions for the school committee and the select board. But from Mr. O'Rourke, from the school building committee, and I know it's difficult. It's difficult for me. It's difficult for all of us to realize this committee's job is this and this committee's job is that. But to the extent that we understand this is the school building committee's job, do we have more questions regarding the school building committee after tonight? Which, they can be asked. Our experts can ask Mr. O'Rourke. We can ask by email. Obviously, it's not the end of the road, but do we think we have more questions from a school building committee point of view?
I guess I have two questions. One is, I know that they've come up with the estimates and the designs in a very compressed time frame. How accurate do they think they are if they move forward? And two, what kind of inflation do they think the projects could incur if they're go into the MSBA program and that takes us another 12 months or 18 months to get approved, and you're 12 to 18 months further out than you are right this second?
Yeah, so good question. With, like I mentioned, the work that we were doing, it was a compressed schedule of a month. We had one meeting with the district, kind of go over everything. I think the program would need to get further refined to really get specific. The specific floor plans we have of layouts of where rooms are, where professional staff rooms are. We haven't been able to go back with the district and sit down with them to kind of walk through all that. It was basically a first pass. So when we looked at this, the the construction contingency that the estimator carried was roughly 15%. And I want us to increase that to 20%, mainly just due to that we had a very minimal design. For me, I would look at these as lower end costs, and I hesitate saying that, but it's just the reality being design and construction, that I don't want people to hang their hats on a number that was developed in essentially a 2-week design period and a 1-week review period. When you're talking about an $5 million project, I just get cautious that things may have been missed in that time, and that additional things may come out. So, and I'm not trying to say that to play up what I think the higher cost would be. It's just my design experience, anything that's been done under a month is very schematic.
Well, that's great. So process-wise, I guess this is a question for everybody. I think process-wise, so we have these two articles before town meeting. Let's say the town meeting decides to try to purchase Laboret and incur the design costs with the architects, so that'd have to require an override vote by the town, which would happen later in the fall. And then the architect would go and do the, more detailed analysis and design work. And that would come hopefully before the town meeting again in 2027. And that would require another override for the construction costs. Is that what we're kind of thinking, right? Yeah.
Yeah, correct. And just to kind of think of it, knowledge purchase and funding. What we're trying to do is again be reactive to this as quickly as possible. So for designer funding, we have currently 1.5 million appropriated to school building committee for what I'll call our MSBA process or our claim that we're doing there. If it's decided to purchase Laboret, not go back to MSBA and just go on a faster path to address this thing, that is the reason we're proposing that other article to provide a separate funding lane. They're both individual. We're not going to do both projects or spend both funds. We'd only draw down on one or the other, depending on which way this goes. And we only wanted to put that there so that if the decision is there, we want to go quickly and efficiently on this, that we didn't have to wait for a future town meeting to allocate that funding.
And then broadly speaking, this might be more for Jay, right? So if there's two potential override votes for the town on just this one project, then there's still the fire station override and potentially an operating override in the next couple of years. So that's a lot of asking to people. But it is what it is, right? Just important, I think, for us all to kind of be aware of it.
Yeah, can I get Sean to clarify what you said? So Article 7, which is $1.2 million for architecture, et cetera, we would use that if we don't go the MSBA route, and if we do go the MSBA route, we would, then what money? I'm a little confused. Do
No
we
problem.
use previously allocated money?
So,
Previously approved money?
yep. So the 1.5 million that was previously approved, currently operating with the MSBA kind of lane that we're operating in. That is there. We're utilizing that right now to fund our existing owners project.
Okay,
The additional funding, what this article is doing is setting up a separate funding source outside of MSBA that if we were to purchase Laboret and be successful, essentially the next decision point, if we're successful there from school committee and select board, is do we stay with MSBA and restart the program, or do we just go on our own at a faster pace and complete this project and move on? If we go on our own, we can't use the funding that's allocated for MSBA designers. We have to have separate funding for it, and that's the reason for that.
thank you. That'll be important to make clear to town meeting that we approved $1.5 million, last year? We're approving $1.2 million this year. We're gonna use one or the other, but not both. Thank you for making that clear to me. And it'll be on me as well as others to make it clear to town meeting. Thank you.
Sorry, so has the 1.5 been drawn down yet for the MSBA? Any portion of it?
I would say a very small portion for the initial efforts that we have the OPM working on, and I'm talking 20.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing close to even the high number that's there. And we're being cognizant of the, with these, as everything with school building committee, we're working in parallel. I think this is like our first time on this effort. That we've been looking at two different options for our overall change. So I think we're pretty well versed in it at this point.
Okay. Do we have other questions for Mr. O'Rourke from a school building committee point of view?
I just want to thank you, Sean. Other people said this, but you've been doing this a long time. Really appreciate your efforts. And sorry you were the lone person here to get the grilling from all of us.
Happy to jump on. You know, what I mean, I know this is a very big decision for everybody in the town, and you know, what I mean, we're as I said from the beginning, we're here as advisors. We have a long history. Our whole committee, you know, there's five appointed members of us that have been on the entire time. One other appointed member from select board that you know, and then the others that have kind of then as elections change. But you know, Mr. Chair, as you have the other members of school committee and select board, I'm happy to come back and join them just in case other things may come up. So feel free to just let me know when that date is.
We'll try to minimize our demands on you, Mr. O'Rourke. Thank you. Thank you for the offer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we want to discuss among ourselves? I mean, we should talk either, as I said, we'll be talking at the end of the meeting. When are we going to meet next? What more do we need? Should we have, putting that aside, should we talk is there more discussion among ourselves now, or do we want to wait till we speak to more guests?
From the school committee and the select board myself, you know,
Yep.
a lot of information to digest here.
Yep. And that's certainly not on them, it's on me. I reached out to them too late, but I will be coordinating with them when they can meet with us. If that's that for this week, I'd like to move to other items on the agenda. We have two committees in town that have representation from the warrant committee on them. There's I'll call it the capital committee, I'm getting the name wrong, but for all intents and purposes, it's the capital committee. We have one representative to that capital committee. This past year, our representative was Lorraine, and so let's elect a representative for this year. Elaine.
I'd like to nominate Lorraine D. as the representative from the warrant committee for the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, which is the title you were looking for.
Thank you. Lorraine, are you willing to?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Lorraine, can you speak a bit? As I said, you served on this last year. Can you say a bit more about, I know you've been on it for more than just the previous year.
Yeah, I've been on it in the past as a citizen also, and I think twice as a warrant committee, but here's where the projects come up that are capital improvement, and it talks about free cash and bonding and what allocations should go to those projects, in what year should those projects come up. And so usually there's a whole list of a couple of pages and deciding on, is it this year and next year? And it's always what's put to the town in the warrant. There's always a lot more projects, but you can only do so much in a year with free cash and how much you're gonna bond. You don't wanna bond, over bond. And so it's spelled out over a couple of years. And because there are people who put in projects saying, we're not gonna need this for a year or 2 years, but they're holding their place because of how things are spread out. And there's representation from multiple people, and we make suggestions, and it gets put forward as comments in the warrant.
Can you
And then
remind
it comes
us-
back to the select board, and then it comes back to the warrant committee. So,
Your previous, so how many years in total were you on this committee, and when
well,
was it?
this year, this past year, and then I was on probably another year as a citizen, but it was a couple of years. And then I think the first time I may have been on it is when I was first on the warrant committee, which was back with Katie Conlon was the person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I find it very interesting and looking at the bigger projects and over long term, so.
So we've had a nomination. I'm not sure if I heard a second.
Second.
Okay, we've heard a second. It can be competitive. Is there other nominations or discussion of other candidates, or if not, then we will vote on the one candidate we have in front of us. Hearing none, we have a motion and a second for Lorraine D. to be our representative. Karen, can you call roll, please?
Lane,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes,
Right.
yes, yes, sure. Yes. I didn't know I could vote for
Larry?
myself.
Larry?
Yes.
La Vida?
Yes.
See,
Who?
I didn't hear that one.
Lindsay. Oh, yes,
Lindsay?
yes.
Ron? Okay, Ron?
Yes.
Jimmy?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Cecile?
Yes.
And Jay?
I'll vote yes. Okay. The
Lorraine
other,
is done?
the other position, thank you for your service, Lorraine. The other positions to fill are the two positions on the Joint Budget Committee. This is a new committee last year. I would say it largely is regarding coordination between the major committees, school committee, select board, warrant committee. We have a representative from the planning board, making sure everybody knows what's going on. It didn't have 100% success rate last year, but it was better than not having it. And also, to the extent that if elbows are getting thrown a little bit, sticking up for the prerogatives of the warrant committee, that, we are not a rubber stamp, we are a part of the process, just like the rest of the committees are. Last year it was Brian, who is not on here anymore, and it was Brian and me. I would prefer not to serve on it again, just because I'm going to be involved in these discussions as the chair in some sense, and if I have two others of you involved in these discussions also, the more the merrier. So I'm opening up the floor to self-nominations or peer nominations to anyone who would be willing to serve on the Joint Budget Committee.
I'm interested in participating on that committee.
I'm also interested in participating in that committee.
Okay, that was Jimmy and Nick that we heard from.
Yes.
Okay. We've got two volunteers. I won't say suckers, I'll say volunteers. Is there anyone else who has an interest in this? Excellent. Can someone officially make the motion for Jim? Okay, Elaine.
I'd like to nominate Nick and Jimmy to be our representatives on the Joint Budget Committee.
Joint Budget Committee.
Great.
Yes.
Any
Second.
Cecile seconds it. Okay. Karen, can you roll call, please?
Elaine?
Yes.
Cole?
I didn't hear that.
Sorry, yes. Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes,
Larry?
Yes.
Vida?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Jimmy?
Yes.
Yes.
Cecile?
Yes.
And Jay?
Yes. Excellent.
Motion carries.
Thank both of you for stepping forward. So now, we are at exactly 8 PM. I couldn't have done it more perfect. Other fall town meeting articles. I'm not sure if our town administrator has joined us.
I believe he has just joined.
Oh, okay. And our town finance director, I think, may be showing up in person soon, but is not here yet. You think Mr. Milano has joined us? Well,
Yes, good evening. How are you?
oh, hello. We're just about to start talking about all the articles that are not related to La Brea.
Great.
So, we'll begin at the beginning. I hope you all got the draft article, the draft warrant that was sent around within the past week. The first article, and I know some of these, all these have experts assigned to them, and I totally understand some people have not had time to look into it, and that is completely understandable. So when I sort of poke at you and say, what's going on with this? We're not going to shame you if you say, I still need to do more work on it. Let's sort of go through them one by one. Article 1 is changing the appropriations for fiscal year 27. So I believe I asked Andrew and Jimmy to look into this. Andrew or Jimmy, would either of you like to speak to this, or should we ask Mr. Milano to give us an overview?
An overview wouldn't hurt, but I do have some questions, for sure.
Okay, Mr. Milano, can you say a little bit about what this article is?
So I included in the warrant a draft comment that gives a very kind of high-level overview. But every year we set the reserve fund that is part of the operating budget for that fiscal year. This money can only be transferred out with a vote of the warrant committee and is supposed to be used for extraordinary or unanticipated expenses. So it's a nice set aside of money that we're able to access at year end to address, typically at year end, I should say, to address unexpected expenses that occur throughout the year. Recent examples include snow and ice and other overspends in certain budgets for essentially one-time overspends. Why we have this article for the fall town meeting is because through the state budget process, the House of Representatives and the state Senate significantly increased the amount of money that was going to state aid from what the town's budget relied upon when we set our budget for town meeting, which was the governor's budget, which was released in January. So the House budget comes out in April, the Senate budget comes out in May, and then the final state budget typically approved at the end of June, early July. So once the final state budget was set, cities and towns across Massachusetts, including Milton, benefited from that infusion of additional money into state aid. So what we propose to do is to appropriate those funds, but for fiscal 27, to put those into the reserve fund rather than paying any additional new expenses or recurring expenses, but set it aside in the reserve fund to be used if necessary. If not, the funds would go unspent and close out at the year end to be part of next year's budget surplus. So that's what we propose to do here. Again, just take the additional state aid that was included in the state budget, put it into the reserve fund for fiscal 27.
Thank you. I guess my question is, are there any anticipated departments that require it now, or is every department okay at the moment and not needing any additional funds?
Yes, I mean, correct. It's, we're lucky it's the first month of the fiscal year that at this rate, everybody should be on budget. There's nothing that's come up that's been immediately critical. As the committee was discussing earlier this evening, there's a potential acquisition of Library College. If that goes through, there's certainly some additional added operating expenses for the balance of this year that aren't included in the fiscal 27 budget in any way. Otherwise, if we have another heavy winter like we just had, you think about snow and ice. If mechanical equipment were to be break down, need to be replaced, that we can't wait for the next capital round, then that's a potential use of this money. So it's there to be used if necessary. There's nothing necessarily at this time that we have earmarked these funds for.
Okay. And then as the year progresses, what do you do if additional funds are required by each department? Is it easily transferable, or does that require a vote?
So generally what we do is we're able to absorb anything that happens throughout the year within departmental budgets for the most part. And then we will address any deficits at year end, but we usually have a decent line of sight as we make our way through the fiscal year. But yes, the funds would need to be approved to be transferred out of this fund by the warrant committee. So we would have to come back. The most recent example of kind of being out of cycle was a couple of years ago, and the chair sometimes talks about this, is we had a wood chipper that crashed, and our operating expense to rely on private companies to do that would have been significant. So we came to the warrant committee, I think in like November or December, to request that funding. But generally we wait till the end of the year, but it does require a vote from this committee to transfer money out.
Okay. And then what was how did you arrive at the 363,469 figure? It's 121% more than last year. How did you arrive at that?
That's not any kind of number I came up with. It's the delta between what we used for our state aid allotment and when we set the budget and what actual state aid is going to be. So that 363 represents the difference between what we included in the budget when we built it in the spring versus what was actually approved by the state.
Okay. I have no additional questions. Thank you.
So Nick, I have a question, and you might be able to read my mind, but if we have an extra $363,000, to me, the two obvious places it could go are here or the budget stabilization fund, which then, or sorry, the override stabilization fund, which then can, help us get a little bit, a tiny bit, but a tiny bit farther to the next override, make the little next override a tiny bit less painful. You and the select, how do I, is this your recommendation that it goes in this account? What was your thinking for recommending that it go with this account as opposed to the override stabilization fund?
Well, we talked about that, but I in my view, and what the select board ultimately voted when they submitted the article was to put it into this fund. It gives us a little bit of flexibility if necessary in this fiscal year. Certainly, it's preferable that we don't have to spend it, in which case it would close out to future year budget surplus and translate into free cash in a future year. So it's pretty similar in that respect. It's obviously, as you know, a little bit easier to use these funds because it would only require a vote of the warrant committee rather than if it were to go into a stabilization fund, require a vote of town meeting to take out. And then just based on our experience with this past winter, we were certainly lucky within this fiscal year to be able to absorb a very significant deficit in our snow and ice, but that's not going to be the case in all budget years. So, just having a little bit more money set aside here, we felt was prudent. But ultimately, they accomplish, I would say, very similar goals.
I think I'd agree. I guess my concern is if we don't use this here, then it closes free cash, which people view as one-time money. And people are understandably very nervous about, let's say this is free cash, I can't even do the math. 1-2 years from now, people are then very nervous about using that free cash for ongoing expenses. Whereas if it's in the override stabilization fund, tomato, possibly. I don't know. I don't know if there's a question in there.
I think you're expressing the same internal conversation that we had, and then ultimately where you landed was that a recommendation to put into the reserve fund for this year was logical, and like I said, ideally we don't touch it, and then it still builds into those reserves. But if we need it, it's going to be because we need it for a reason.
Okay. And so again, this is adjusting the FY27 budget. We are currently into FY27. We approved the FY27 budget last May's town meeting. This is adjusting it. People on Zoom can feel free to take themselves off mute. I'm looking around. Are there questions? And if not, then my question to the committee would be, are we comfortable voting on this recommendation tonight?
I am.
I'm seeing nods from people in the room. The floor is open to a motion. Okay.
I would just wait for maybe Andrew if he has any, if he wants to opine on this, but I'm ready to go.
Understood. Understood. I have mixed feelings. I certainly, I asked Andrew to look into this. He's not here tonight. On the other hand, a quorum of the warrant committee is a quorum of the warrant committee. We can do business. I have faith that if this body acts tonight, and if Andrew wants to look into it, wants to raise issues, that this body would listen to Andrew and, consider changing our actions. So I hear what you're saying, but I also, we have a quorum tonight.
So process-wise, if we vote today, and then if Andrew comes back with additional findings, what is the process like to
It's
amend our?
It's a little messy. If we have to undo something we did, then somebody makes a motion to undo what we did, we vote to undo what we did, and then we vote for the new thing. I mean, that's my job. That's why I get paid the big bucks, because I shepherd it here.
Doesn't sound too bad.
It's my only concern, that's all.
Thank you for
Are
speaking
there,
up.
are there concerns that there will not be a quorum at the next meeting?
I don't have that concern. My concern is just sort of watching the clock. You know, we've got one or two more meetings to take care of all these. You know, several of these things I know we won't get done tonight because they just came up. So if I can if we can in good faith cross something off the list tonight, I'd like to, but I'm not gonna twist anybody's arm. Does that answer your question? To directly answer your question, no, I'm not worried about a quorum at the next meeting. I just, you know, save 10 minutes off our next meeting. Was there a motion?
I'm just trying to word the motion in my head. I'd like to make a motion that the Warrant Committee recommend approval of Article 1. Is that how to do it?
Sure, you know, as printed in the draft
As
warrant
printed in the draft warrant.
sent around the past week, I think that's perfectly fine. You can also say to adjust the reserve fund allocation by $363,469,
Okay,
if you so choose.
that's what I just said.
Second.
That's what I heard.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have a motion and a second. Now there is time for discussion, if discussion is needed. Seeing none, Karen, can you take roll call for the first article approval of this new warrant committee?
Lane,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes,
Larry, Avita,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Jimmy,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Cecile,
Yes.
Jay.
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next two, I believe I am looking at Lorraine. Lorraine, would you like to speak to Article 2? And or would you like to tap Mr. Milano to introduce Article 2?
is Article 2 the bonds?
They're both bonds, aren't they?
Article 2 is the fire engine. Yes.
Article 2 is bonds, yes.
If he wants to speak about it, he can. It's pretty straightforward. Is he still on?
Are you asking Mr. Milano to speak about it?
I mean, if he wants to, I can just speak about it and then he can add stuff to it. How's that?
Okay.
Because this one is pretty
the floor of yours.
straightforward here. It's authorizing the transfer of surplus bond money, which is, if there's money left over from previous projects that were approved, but the money wasn't completely needed to complete that project. So the two of them that have come up is the DPW locker room and cemetery garage had a surplus of $350,000. And then there was the Pine Street Brook Flood Control Dam at $75,000. If the surplus is less than $50,000, the select board kind of decides where it goes, I guess. Over $50,000, it has to go to the town meeting members to vote on it. So what was suggested is that back in, I don't know, 25, the town meeting approved Fire Engine 2 to be replaced at a cost of $1.1 million. And that was going to be delivered in the winter of 26. What's being asked here is that they take the combined $350,000 and $74,000, which totals $424,000, use that surplus towards the engine replacement, which is gonna cost, it would have cost 1.1 million if we put the 424,000 to that, then we would only have to bond, we would only have to, reducing the cost, we would only borrow $675,998. So basically, there's money, there's a surplus, the projects it was being used for were completed, this money's extra. The suggestion is, instead of borrowing 1.1 million, we take the surplus of the 424,000 and put it towards the fire truck, and therefore we're left with less money to borrow for the fire truck.
That was good.
I had a long day, I'm sorry. That's kind of, and I don't know if Nick wants to say something else about that.
Well, thank you. You covered it, and just a little color on why we chose that capital purchase. We are required to put the surplus proceeds to something that has an equal or longer useful life. So with the fire truck at a 20-year useful life, we're able to transfer that money from these bonds that were issued for 20 years and 15 years to a fire truck, which we could issue bonds for up to 20 years for. So that's why we chose this piece of capital equipment. And as she noted, it's already been previously approved. So this is an additional fire truck. This is something that was already approved by the town meeting. We're just offsetting the future borrowing costs of it.
But it is to replace one, right? So we won't have an extra, not an extra.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Replacement of the engine that's operating out of the East Milton station currently.
Okay.
Any discussion?
I just want to say this seems like a no-brainer to me. Of course, I'm open to discussion, but this is about saving the town from having to bond additional costs, so.
Were there other assets that were of equal or longer depreciation, or was this the only one?
Yes, yes and no. We have a fire ladder replacement that is coming, but we expect to receive it in September, so we can only move these proceeds against a future expense. So we didn't really have anything else that really fit both the useful life and was something that was previously approved that we haven't completed yet. So this fire engine, which was approved last year at town meeting, hasn't arrived. We haven't paid for it. It has a long enough useful life. So it kind of checked the boxes to be able to apply these proceeds against.
Thanks.
Do I hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that the warrant committee recommend a yes vote on Article 2 as printed in the draft warrant that was sent out last week.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Karen, can you do a roll call, please?
Lane,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Larry, Lavita,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Jimmy,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Cecile,
Yes.
and Jay.
Abstain. Thank you.
Motion carries.
Okay, Lorraine, it's falling on your shoulders again. Can you speak to Article 3, Lorraine?
All right, this is about the, replacing the water system throughout the town. It's kind of a rotating project, given the age of our water system and having to replace them. But this basically was submitted by the select board, but it allows the select board to apply for and use federal funds, state funds, MWRA, or any other kind of funds, and appropriate them to a project. In previous years, because again, this is rotating, and they're going around replacing them, in previous years, town has to go to the town meeting. The town meeting in 24, 25, and 26 approved 1.7 million, 1.7 million, $1,790,000 to improve projects. And again, it's on a rotating basis. The Department of Public Works, what they're doing is preparing a package for the water replacement improvement projects, but they wanted to be able to be seeking the opportunity to increase the total appropriation and make it available for a larger bid package. The additional work they're thinking of adding on to this is Governor's Road, which apparently had some kind of leakage, breakage of their main at one point in the past. And the other one would be Franklin Street and Bassett Street, which I think had an issue with the water main also. But what they're suggesting with that is if they can do it now, while there's construction already going on in that area, they would be able to improve both the underground infrastructure and the road work, and that would be less of a disruption later on. So now that, the whole area is disrupted now because of the construction, which is going to get finished. If this can be done at the same time in that area, it would be less of a disruption, and like you wouldn't have to rip the whole thing over again after. So it is an addition to what's normally been appropriated, but they're just asking to see if they can add these two other projects to it for the reasons stated. Unfortunately, it's not even something, it's a system that it's old and it just is going, so we have to keep up with it. So that is it. So increase the funding, the appropriation to 2.2 to finance the rehab replacement of the town water system, of what they have, plus these two additional projects.
Is this 2.2 plus whatever we approved in May? Or instead of whatever we approved in May? Mr. Milano, do you know that?
I don't know, it's just to borrow the, well, this is to authorize the bar, so isn't this what we?
So I think it's in addition.
Is this coming up this year?
I assume we did something in annual town meeting in May, and this is in addition?
Just this 1.7 is what is previously done, both in this town meeting and prior, and this 2.2 would be in addition to that.
Thank you.
We draw down this money from the MWRA, which is our water supplier, and we're able to do so 10 years at no interest from the MWRA. So it's a no interest loan over 10 years for any water main and sewer main projects through the MWRA program.
Thank you. No interest is always key.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Blaine?
It's mentioned here, Nick, that, the select board can accept grants and gifts from the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, but are we expecting that? And if so, is there a ballpark amount on that? Or are we gonna be, interest-free, are we gonna be ponying up as a town the whole almost 2.3?
The standard language we use because the MWRA program sometimes can fluctuate. Generally on the water side, it's a loan-based program at a 10-year loan at no interest. The sewer side often has a grant component. In this case, we expect it to be a 10-year no interest loan only. It is possible that sometimes the MWRA will release additional funding that's just grant funding. That's why that language is in there, but I would say we expect in this case to be that 10-year no interest loan.
Any other questions?
Do we know what enhancements they're making?
Right now, the work proposed by DPW is water main replacement, so it's complete replacement of the water main that's in the street. The proposed road one is 1915, 1932. Franklin is 1926, so we're talking, 100-plus-year-old water mains at this point that are just being replaced in their entirety.
Okay. Thank you.
Does someone want to make a motion? Do I hear silence because we don't have enough information to decide tonight?
I just think it's worded weird.
Well, I don't doubt it's worded weird. I also bet it's worded the exact same way in the
Every
past
time,
10
yeah, that's fine.
warrants. We could double check, but
No,
I suspect it is.
I was waiting for Elaine's leadership again.
Yeah, I guess I just have a question for Nick. Lorraine said that the reason to do it now is because of the construction going on in the area. Are there other reasons to do it now, that we should move this money now?
Well, there's also an issue of, I think they said Franklin Street had a flooding also. And Governor's Road had one, so these would be additional.
Okay.
So they just thought timing wise, if they could do it now, it doesn't mean, if we don't do it now, we have to do it later, and it would be more disruptive, is my understanding.
All right, I'd like to recommend, I'd like to make a motion that the warrant committee recommend a yes vote on Article 3 as written in the draft warrant that was sent out a week ago.
You're so good at this.
The sum of
For the sum of, $2,280,000.
I'll second it, I'll be.
Thank you.
Any discussion on this motion? Karen, can you do a roll call vote?
Elaine,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes,
Larry,
Yes.
Levita,
Yeah.
Lindsay,
yes,
Ron,
Yes.
Jimmy,
Yeah.
Nick,
Yes.
sure.
Cecile,
Yes.
and Jay.
Abstain.
The
Thank you.
motion carries.
And certainly one takeaway I got from that last discussion was that I think we made a good choice in who we appointed as our capital representative. Thank you for
Thank you.
explaining the ins and outs of the pipes to us. The next two articles, and the last two, not counting La Brea related, were I'll say new articles. I wasn't expecting them until I saw them in this draft warrant less than a week ago. They're not on the agenda to vote tonight. We're not going to vote tonight. I did ask two warrant committee members to take a stab at seeing what these are. I don't know if they're prepared to speak to them tonight. Article 4, regarding a community preservation committee grant for a playground. Ron, are you prepared to speak to this?
Hey, Jay. No, not yet. I'm going to talk to Tom,
Okay.
and I hope to get him this week, and then I'll come back and share more information at our next warrant committee meeting.
Okay. So, Mr. Milano, it sounds like we'll be hearing from the Community Preservation Committee. Do you have anything real quick you want to say on this? I mean, I guess my number one question is, why is this coming up now and not at the fall town meeting?
You mean at spring? So
It's late.
8:30. Yeah, so this, we had let the community preservation committee, depending on the project request for the Atherton Street Station from CPC for historical preservation. So they had, and I asked them to consider including that on the fall town meeting. It also turned out that this project, which is the playground replacement at the Tucker School, it has a bunch of other funding as well, part of it, and trying to work towards a summer 2027 construction project to go to school position. So logistically, it's a bit challenging for procurement's sake and for contractor coordination, contract administration, et cetera. So ideally, they would have as much of their funding committed and appropriated prior to really this winter. So then we can assist them on procurement, bidding, and contracting to line up a contractor so that the playground equipment is delivered, that the contractors are showing up, that third week of June right away to work all the way through the summer. So as much as complete as possible by September. So that's the reason to have a CPC project out of cycle, is really about having the money in place ahead of like the bidding and procurement for a potential summer project that has to be done on a very tight timeline. So is the CPC can speak to it, and Ron, I can send you the contacts for a couple of the folks organized with the Tucker School PTO who can speak to the project as well.
Okay, that'd be super helpful. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I think in the room we got a little more than half of that, but I think our friends on Zoom got all of it, and we'll be hearing back later.
I'd like to make a motion to have
Okay.
the speakers in here checked before our next meeting. I was joking about the motion, but
No,
it's really hard to make out some of this information.
Yeah, I don't know if I know this room is used often. I don't know if we're the first ones who've had this problem, but we'll talk to our friends at MATV. Yeah, we're muddling by. So that's that one. We're gonna put that on hold. Article 5, Lindsay, I don't know, again, I'm putting you on the spot. Do you have anything to say about Article 5?
No, not this meeting.
Okay. It looks like, Mr. Milano, can you say a little bit about Article 5 and why it's coming up? Or should we just be patient and collect information for a future meeting?
Yes, sorry for the technical issues for those in the room. And I will follow up with MATV as well. But Article 5 is really a housekeeping item. This is MBTA community zoning related. The MBTA community zoning allows for affordability requirements in units, projects with 10 units or more to have 10% of the units be affordable, unless we have an economic feasibility analysis that says that that Milton economy can support a 15% affordability requirement. So we have completed that economic feasibility assessment that has been submitted to the state. The state has accepted it. So the town's effective requirement for affordable housing requirements in MBTA communities projects is 15%. So this is I would characterize it as a housekeeping article to strike the reference to 10% of units, just for clarity's sake moving forward. So what is in place now is that 8 or more units, projects of 8 or more units, 15% of those units have to be affordable units at 80% of AMI. In all projects coming out of the MBTA community zoning, there haven't been any to date, but this is for future projects, and this article just cleans up and clarifies that zoning language.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. And I think what also will be important to emphasize to town meeting and to the warrant committee is Article 5 is the paragraph we see in front of us. So town meeting cannot take action on more than the paragraph in front of us. Town meeting cannot, as a result of Article 5, say, we're gonna get out of MBTA Communities Act, for example. So I think we'll remind the people at town meeting, our discussion is limited to this paragraph. We'll remember that in the warrant committee, and we'll do some of our homework, and I appreciate your input, Mr. Milano. Any more discussion on this? So then that leaves us with, it's 8:30, God, it feels later. That leaves us with articles that are not gonna be on the fall town meeting on the fall town meeting warrant. One of them being the local historic district, which I understand the select board opted not to put on the warrant. I'll fully confess, I started listening to the select board meeting today. I didn't get far enough to hear their full discussion, but I understand that was the result, is that it's not gonna be on the fall town meeting warrant. Not sure that there's much more to say about that. And then.
I will second that.
You'll second that?
Yes.
I thank you for your support, Ron. Ron and I were going to be the experts on this one, and so now we're, sitting back drinking martinis or something. And also there's the, sorry, why am I drawing a blank? There's the fire station. and there's the short-term housing laws, both of which are not gonna make it to the fall town meeting. I don't know if there's anything anyone wants to say about either of those at this meeting. I think, and I think one thing I'd like, oh, sorry, Larry, go ahead.
I didn't actually want to do any research on the fire station because I saw that, I'd heard that it was going to be pulled, so. But it does seem like there was some talk about a special town meeting in like January or something like that. Are all three of these articles, do we know anything about that, or is that still just in discussions?
Mr. Milano?
At least for the fire station one.
So, yes, no town meeting for the spring has been called. What would work best for the fire station project going forward would be to have an additional special town meeting January, February, March timeframe ahead of the annual town election, because that project will require both a town meeting vote and a question vote on the election. So that way, if there's a spring special town meeting, late winter special town meeting, the town meeting can vote, and then the voters can cast their votes in the annual town election and later the special election. So it's no book fire station project. Select board has yet to call it, set a date, and I can't speak to the timeline for the short-term rentals, although I think there is consensus among select board and planning board to have something completed at least prior to the annual town meeting.
So we're not really with the hook on this.
Okay, that's good to hear. I mean, I certainly, I would throw in my 2 cents as the short-term rentals, if those could also be on the, let's call it a February town meeting, for lack of a better term. The more we can spread the love, the better, because then we can do our job better to prepare for the annual town meeting.
Have the annual town meeting mostly focused on budget, and I'm sure there'll be a few other things in there too, but that would be easier.
Yeah,
I mean, and plus, town meeting can, sort of focus on that short-term rental because it's so important, and we really want to get it right. So.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I want to organize my thoughts a bit more than they're organized right now, and maybe express that to the planning board. So, no other, we don't need to discuss those other articles much. So let's go back to where we started this meeting, which is looking at the calendar. I'm going to share my screen a bit.
Jay, before we do that,
yes.
Do you think, can we ask Mr. Milano some of those questions and see if he can give us the answers that we might have had, or an indication of when we might be able to get those answers?
Yeah, please do. Mr. Milano, we had some questions regarding the Labouré, which were sort of out of scope for Mr. O'Rourke. Nick, do you want to take it away? Sorry, Nick Tangney, do you want to take it away to speak to Nick Milano?
Yeah, sure. So I think we have 3 questions. I don't know that it's fair to ask you those questions, but there seem to be 3 key questions as it relates to the Labouré, and recognize that the actual, construction of Labouré is sort of a different decision in the future, right? But one is, how much is the acquisition going to be for? And I guess you guys are in negotiations on that, so you may not be able to give a number, but maybe you could give a time frame. The second question is, do we know what the school committee's view of this is? It would seem like really important for them to endorse that they're enthusiastic or not about building the pre-K and K program that's being discussed at Labouré. And the third thing is, so what happens if we buy Labouré and then somehow decide not to build the school there? What is the exit plan for Milton with regards to the utilization of that property? And you might not be in a position to answer those questions, but I think we discussed earlier, at least in my mind, those are 3 important questions that will be valuable in helping the Warrant Committee form the recommendation.
Questions? So in terms of acquisition, yes, just in terms of process, what has happened is we've been engaging with the sellers and directly numerous times, so we've been in close contact with them throughout this process. We conducted an appraisal. We've received that appraisal. and the select board has transmitted an offer to La Brea accordingly. Our understanding is they are accepting offers through the end of this week, and then the information coming out after that. So we expect to be able to share more news in terms of potential acquisition costs in the near term. But for now, I'll characterize it as that. And once I'm able to share more, I will do so. Obviously, just trying to protect our ability to negotiate as well. School committee view, we had, I obviously missed the first bit of your meeting, so I don't know if the school committee was in attendance at this meeting, but school committee chair Mark Loring did attend the select board meeting last week, where you can see both his comments and the superintendent's comments about the pre-KK use of the facility. But I would certainly encourage, a future meeting or joint meeting between school committee, warrant committee, or at least representatives of such to speak directly to that. And then what happens if we buy it and the school project for whatever reason does not go forward? We've had some conversations about that at the select board level. And there's been, some consideration of how do we not muddle some of the messaging around this and what the intentions are. So I think we've focused primarily on determining whether it's viable for a school and plan to proceed with, the viability that has come back through the work that the school building committee has done in a very short amount of time, and we thank them for that. One of the members of the board and others have talked about whether there needs to be another committee or another group kind of working on the non-school idea. It's still something the select board is considering and looking at. We've had some conversations about, but focused mostly on the school piece. So I can bring that question back and provide additional information at a future meeting with the warrant committee about that aspect and how we would go about handling that a little bit more directly.
Thank you.
So unless there, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Nick. So I'm going to share my screen again for the calendar. So what I'm hearing is, and to inform Mr. Milano, no, we did not have members of the school committee or the select board here tonight. Let me double check my email. So it sounds like we think it's very important to have representatives of the select board and school committee visiting us. So, and I'm trying to talk and do other things at the same time, which is dangerous, but. Okay, forget that.
I think one important thing is, do we know when we think we might know what the number is for the acquisition if the offer is accepted? Because I think that kind of meeting before we know that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
I agree.
Good point. Mr. Milano, could you narrow that down? Like, if we were to schedule a meeting for a week from today, would that be foolish because that'd be before we know the purchase price?
We know what we can control at this point. I can't opine on when La Brea and whatever process they're having quickly or slowly will move. All I can say is that we've expressed to
I apologize. We're not hearing anything you're saying. Wow. Nope.
But it sounds like it would be better to wait and not meet next week at least.
I would not expect to have anything for next week. I think that is fair by the end of the week.
Thank you. Thank you. We are pushing up against warrant printing dates, but so it sounds like the answer is next week would not make sense to meet. I'll put an asterisk in that unless, like, if the only time that is convenient for members of the school committee to meet with us is next week, then maybe we would. But we'll definitely be meeting on the week, I'll say the week of the 24th. We usually meet on Mondays, but it sounds like we might have to roll with things. And to a certain extent, I don't like cutting things at the last minute, but if we didn't set the warrant printing deadline. We're not setting the deadline of when we know about the purchase price, so. I'm still a little confused. The number that we gave to La Brea, that's secret, Mr. Milano?
This time it is, yes, because we would be, anything about the purchase price, we would view as part of our negotiating strategy with them. So we would hold that as confidential until it's rejected, the deal goes a different direction, and until an agreement is reached.
Okay. All right.
Can I ask one question related to that? Why, if this is something that the town has enthusiasm for, and I don't know if that's true or not, why not look at acquiring the property, not through an open bidding process, but through eminent domain?
Eminent domain taking is possible for, to be done by a town for something, I just like to do. Shouldn't just that library has seven. I'll just kind of leave it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so our friends on Zoom heard all of that?
Yeah, maybe Nick can repeat it, the other Nick. You can hear
Yeah,
him.
we're hearing from our
Sorry.
members pretty well. Nick Tiny, can you repeat that?
Let's see if I
Game
can do
of telephone.
justice to what Mr. Milano said was, they're proceeding currently with the bidding process, and they want to see how that plays out, is what I heard.
Okay, so a very diplomatic answer.
That's what I heard, yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, eminent domain is like a legal proceeding, right? It's not, it's probably not the first place you would go.
Probably not, maybe not as easy as some of us are imagining it. So I think where we land is that we're not meeting next week. We're meeting on the 24th. That probably makes it somewhat likely we'll meet on the 31st. Possibly have to call an audible and have like a midweek meeting at some point. I'm just trying to prepare for the worst here. But the immediate future is not meeting next Monday. I will talk to my colleagues on the school committee and the select board, do whatever I can to get them to meet with us. If not on the 24th, then some mutually agreeable time. Okay. Was that just me being a dictator, or does that sound?
Sounds fine.
Okay. Okay. I don't think there's anything else we need to discuss. Yes, Elaine, the final motion of the night.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Yes. Second.
Okay, all in favor, wave at the camera.
Yes.
Hey, thank you all for your work.